Hello everyone and welcome back to yet another video. Now, things are going to be a little bit different this time from my usual tech guides and other tech content, because well, today I'm just going to be talking, I guess. Still going to be going over topics and that lot, hopefully helping you out with your own builds and that lot, but yeah, it's going to be a bit different, so hope you don't mind. The fact it's a bit more indie. Again, there's no video, but if you wait until next week, there'll be a full PC build guide for you guys to follow along with at home. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and get into it then. Alright then, so this video is going to be broken into several sections. I'll start off with talking about pre-built PCs, things that you might want to consider if you decide to go down that route. We have also got, well, pretty much every part that you'll find in your PC, from your CPU to your power supply, well, anything else that you may wish to put in. And we'll go ahead and close up this video with peripherals, such as your keyboard, mouse, your monitor, anything like that. That's how we'll go ahead and finish it off. So, let's get into this. Okay then, so you want to go ahead and buy a pre-built because you might not be too tech savvy, you might be a bit worried about building your own PC, or you want to make sure that you've definitely got a warranty. Well, it's certainly an option, but I will say this, whatever you get your PC for, think, what is it for? What are you going to do with it? And then decide what you're getting off of that. If you're doing, say, a lot of video editing, you want to make sure you've got a PC with a good, strong CPU. Such as like Ryzen R7, R9, or even, an Intel i7 or i9 equivalent. So it's got a strong CPU, so you can definitely plow through sort of any video editing or production workloads like that. Also make sure that it has got a good graphics card. Now if you're not too wise, I'll say this, basically avoid most PCs that have something like a GT 1030 or GT 710. Because at that price range, honestly, the graphics that's built into your CPU will actually be better than the graphics card that you've plugged in. So even if you do decide to do that, all I can recommend is that you open up your PC, take out the graphics card and you leave it be. And I will go ahead and put on a little guide for people if you want to know how to activate your integrated graphics, so you can do something like that. But yeah, be careful when it comes to buying PCs. Make sure you buy something that's appropriate for you, make sure it's got enough memory, video production, and anything that requires a lot of effects. That will generally mean that you will have a hefty load on your memory. Gaming will mean that you will need a lot of power really put into your graphics card, and a lot of general production workloads, you want to make sure you've got a good CPU. Otherwise, an i5 or Ryzen R5 will be pretty decent for most things. Alright then, let's get into the juicy stuff. So you actually want to build your own PC. Well, this is where things become a lot more interesting and, well, a lot more custom. But really, the first question you should ask yourself, which team are you batting? Are you going to be on Team Intel or Team Red with AMD? Me personally, for most people building their own PCs right now, regardless of their workload, I'd probably say you should go for an AMD build. As generally speaking, their actual chips are cheaper, have more power to them. Granted, they may not be as fast on a per core basis, but more than often than not, they will have enough cores to make up for that fact. Hell, if you're going for a super high-end desktop, such as like a Threadripper or even an Epic, if you really went for that, Intel just has not got any competition that go ahead and fight against it. So when it comes to it, I personally recommend AMD, but there are a few applications which Intel does pull ahead, and that is really only single-threaded performance, such as some older games, and maybe a few things where having more cores actually damages your performance, but generally you don't want to go for Intel at the moment. Maybe in a 10th gen when that comes out it could be different, but right now, at this moment in time, I say you should go for a Ryzen processor. Okay? And then your question should be, what processor? Well, two things you need to consider. What are you doing and what's your budget? If you're doing gaming, well then a Ryzen R5 or even a Ryzen R3 will be more than enough. However, if you're doing production, you'll probably want something like an R7 or an R9. And depending on how much you value your time, really, it's a matter of how much you value your time. Paying out what you think you are willing to pay to go ahead and free up more time for you to do, as your computer will be faster for you. But yeah, that's my 2 cents. Take it how you will. Let's move on to the next bit, which will be your RAM. Okay, and we are on to RAM, another real key component of your system. And how much RAM you have and how much you should really pay out for getting faster memory in general will vary from rate to rate. See, if you're doing a production workload, say you do a lot of video editing and you do a lot of special effects or anything like that, you're going to want to have a lot more RAM than most people, preferably around about 32 to 64 gigabytes is more than enough for pretty much everything. Very least though, you want to make sure you've got 16 gigabytes. And with gaming, I'd say you can get away with 8 gigabytes. Realistically, you want 16 gigabytes. And 32 gigabytes if you really, really want to go to town. Say you want to go ahead and install a load of mods, that's the kind of thing where you need 32 gigs of RAM. Otherwise, 16 or 8 gigs of RAM will be more than enough for gaming. And while you're just doing a general, literally you just want a PC to get onto the web, 4 gigabytes will be just enough to scrape by. I personally recommend you get more than that, but if it's all your budget can stretch to, that's what I suggest. And while somewhat related to this, of course, will be RAM speeds. What do you get? Well, if you're with Intel, generally speaking, the speeds aren't super picky, but you still want to make sure that you preferably get the fastest RAM that you can for your buck. You can buy, say, you want to go ahead and buy 8 gigabytes of RAM that's at 3200, but you see something that's literally only a couple of dollars or a couple of pounds more that's at 3600 and you're running a Ryzen processor, you want to go for the 3600 speed. It's faster, as well as it will generally give you more performance in Ryzen. With Intel, it's not generally as picky, but still, having faster RAM can be a nice asset to have in any case. Alright then, so, you've got your RAM, you've got your CPU, you know what you're going to be doing. Okay, now you're going to need to go ahead and get something that you plug it all into. In this case, it'll be your motherboard. So, first things first, how big do you want your PC? Seriously, I'm asking this genuinely because some people, they might not have a lot of space. You might have a tiny little desk and you can't really afford to have a huge desktop sitting there. In which case you might want to go for a mini ITX build, which uses a smaller form factor motherboard so it can fit into smaller cases and, well, as a result of that, you've got more space to actually work upon your desk. Alternatively, you can go for a full-size ATX and take use of its additional features such as the extra PCIe lanes that will become available, as well as PCI slots. Say you do production, you might need a sound card, you might need a video capture card if you're doing streaming. Stuff like that. You can't really do that on mini ITX. Well, you can, it just wouldn't be as effective. If you do value your time, if you want to be careful around that, you want to really get the best motherboard for you. And if you're doing overclocking, then you'll need to pay out for a more expensive chipset. Such as a Z390 board, for example. Or I'm struggling to remember what the AMD is at the moment, but that's what my point is. Make sure you get the board that you need for your purpose, and that is the right size. If you can afford to go ahead and have the huge real estate of an ATX build, go for it. It'll generally work faster than a mini ITX or a micro ATX. But if you don't have the space, go for mini ITX. If you need the extra PCIe slots, make sure you go for ATX. Anyway. Sorry, bit ill. Alright, moving on from the, well, I guess you could call it the foundations of your build, it's time to pick out your graphics card. So, you know what size you're going for, which means you know realistically how much space you're going to have to spare, so don't think, ooh, this one's really expensive, let's go for it. Look at it. Look it up. Is it going to fit? How many slots does it use? Stuff like that you want to make sure before you buy. And more than that, you want to make sure that it's the right card for you. It's probably a bit of I'm sounding like a broken record at this point, but it is the point. It's never a matter of, ooh, this card's the best. It's a matter of, this card's the best for your purpose. Say you want to go ahead and be in production workloads, then yeah, a more expensive card or even a workstation card would probably be better for you than a gaming card. If you're into gaming, getting a Quadro, for example, isn't really the smartest investment of money. Even still, you could buy an RTX 2080 Ti, but does it even fit in your build? You know, if you're building mini ITX, you can't really afford to do that much, not to mention because it will heat the system up tremendously and it'll just overheat constantly. So, is it big enough for you? Is it small enough for you? Is it quiet enough for you? You know, stuff like that you want to look at before you buy, and make sure before you buy anything that you go ahead and check it's all perfectly compatible with one another on a website like PC Part Picker. That's a good one. And you know, you need to make sure this is good for you. You know, if you have higher budget, sure, go for a more powerful card. If you have lower budget, well, get a card that you can afford. But at the end of the day, it's your PC. You do what you want, you enjoy it, you be proud of it. Yeah. Also, by the way, when you are go ahead and looking at all these things, try to make sure that you ignore any sort of marketing buzzwords because they will just throw you off. Okay? Alright. Right, let's move on to the cooler. Okay then, so you've got your graphics card, you've got your CPU, you've got your RAM, you've got your fancy schmancy motherboard. Okay, now you need to pick out a cooler. Now, depending on what you're doing, if you've got a fairly low power CPU or you want to do a cheap system, you may not even have to worry about buying one, because generally speaking, most CPUs they come with a stock cooler and that will be all enough to go ahead and use them adequately. But if you say want a more powerful system, or you want to push your system to the ragged edge with overclocking, then you are definitely going to need a beefier cooler. Or hell, if you want a silent build, you need to make sure you've got a beefier cooler that can do that. Whether it be a big tower cooler, or even a dual tower cooler such as Noctua, just a big one. Or even you go for water cooling. At the end of the day, you need to make sure it works for what you're doing. Is it quiet enough for you? If that is a factor. Is it able to cool your CPU adequately in the first place? You don't want to go ahead and get a I don't know, a CryoRig C7 for a Threadripper. That just wouldn't work. Okay? So make sure it's got adequate cooling. Now, a lot of manufacturers, they will also go ahead and put down what it's compatible with, what they would recommend it with. I know I do talk about Noctua a lot, and people may think it needs to be a Noctua fanboy, but at the end of the day, they have got tremendously good compatibility lists, and you will always know this is compatible with this, and this, and this, and this. And with CPUs, it'll say, okay, this is compatible with all these, and you probably want to use this if you're overclocking, or you don't want to use this if you're overclocking, because you don't have enough headroom. And on top of that, one thing to buy your cooler, it's another thing to make sure you got the right thermal paste. It's just as important as the cooler itself. You can have the fanciest, schmanciest cooler in the world, but if you've got thermal paste that is not expensive, and I'm not saying this as in master race. If you buy, say, the basic, I think it's Xinyun or something like that, Chinese thermal paste, it generally performs about a quarter as well as most main market paste. Now that doesn't sound good because it's not good. If you put that on, say, a Noctua NHD15, sure, your NHD15 will be working fine, it will stay ice cold, because the heat on your CPU just won't be able to transfer to it fast enough, and as a result of that, your CPU will overheat. So always make sure that you do buy thermal paste that is adequate at the very least. If you can go for something more expensive, go for it. Generally speaking, around the $10 to £10 mark, generally speaking, they'll all perform roughly the same, with a few notable exceptions. But either way, make sure you get good thermal paste and a good cooler. Even if you have a bad cooler, make sure you've got a good thermal paste, because it will give that cooler the best chance possible at cooling your CPU. Okay? Alright. Right, moving on to storage. Okay, so you've got your CPU, RAM, motherboard, pretty much everything that'll be sitting in the main compartment of your PC. Now it's time to move on to the boring stuff, but most important, storage. Now, I will say this, sometimes, yeah, it's great to save a buck, but if you can possibly avoid it, never buy a second-hand hard drive, and maybe avoid second-hand SSDs. It's not the fact that it will always be a bad thing. Sometimes you can get tremendously good deals and they will be perfectly fine. Hell, you might even get them brand new. Yeah. At the end of the day, hard drives and SSDs, they degrade fairly badly. You know, especially a used hard drive, it can get into a whole barrel of fun that nobody wants to get in with. So that is my first point. My second point, if you're building a PC, try and make sure that you get an SSD. If your motherboard has an NVMe, I recommend getting one because it'll make it a lot faster and a lot snappier if you install your operating system. Yeah, it'll be quicker, you'll load things in quicker, and if you can put all your storage onto that, go for it. Yeah. At the end of the day, that'll be a lot faster than a hard drive. But if you can't do that, say you need a mass storage, then let's just get a decent hard drive. Me personally, I've always trusted Western Digital. I know Seagate are perfectly fine, just personal preference. And hell, in my own editing rig, my main one's got 3 of their hard drives. It's got a Western Digital Blue 1TB hard drive. That's my operating system because, well, there's a bit of a story behind that. I've got another 2TB 2.5-inch one. Another Western Digital Blue. It's a bit slow, but at the end of the day, it's the size of a laptop's hard drive. And it holds 2TB. There's not much you can complain about. And considering it's literally just the storage for my games, and yeah, it could be faster. I don't mind it. It works for me. It works for my purpose because at the end of the day, I need a lot of storage because I do video editing. A lot of my initial footage is in 4K. Hence the reason I also have a 10TB hard drive, which is tremendously big. And whilst, yes, you could probably get 10TB in SSDs, how much will it cost you to get 10TB in SSDs? And even if you do, will you even have enough space to put all those SSDs into your system? You think about your own system's space, especially when you're buying the case after you've gone through all this. Like, does it have the ability to even support X, Y, and Z? If not, you've got an issue. So, make sure you always have enough storage. If you're doing video editing, you probably won't have to worry too much because you might, say if you're at work, you'll probably have a server which all your stuff is stored on. In which case, you want to have the operating system on its own hard drive, well, its own SSD, and get a second, very fast SSD to act as a storage disk to go ahead and drag everything onto, whilst you're working on it before you put it back on the server. If you're doing gaming, generally speaking, you want an SSD to go ahead and have your operating system on, make most things snappy. Maybe, put a couple of your main games on there, and go ahead and have a hard drive for mass storage. Say you've got a dozen games. Some of them could be up to 50 to 100 gigabytes in size. You can't put that on an SSD sometimes. So generally, you might want to have a 2TB hard drive alongside your 500 or 250 gig SSD. Okay, all right. I've been rambling on enough about that. Let's go ahead and move on to, well, the case. Okay then, so here's the, well, last super one that you need to make sure you get right. Now, PC cases, they're subjective. At the end of the day, you're picking something that you're going to be looking at for as long as you have it. Whether it be a small steel box or a huge glorious thing with glass side panel windows and detailing and RGB, at the end of the day, it's something that you're going to be looking at, and it's be your preference. Doesn't matter if a reviewer says, ooh, this is ugly. If you find it beautiful, that is your decision, that's your subjective opinion. So if that's the case, get it. The only thing you need to make sure is that it's compatible with everything else that you've put on there already. In which case, this is definitely the point where you need to go ahead and check PC hardware. So it'll tell you if this will fit, if this is compatible with this, if this case even supports this size of motherboard. So if anything, make sure you have it right, and make sure that it's got enough space for your storage. If you want to do it properly and screw down your storage like you're supposed to, do that. I know some people, not looking at certain liners, don't do that at times, but it's all down to your preference. You need to make sure you've got enough space, well, for your graphics card, make sure you've got enough space for your cooler. That's one thing that I do recommend that you always check your manufacturers on. If you really like a cooler, especially a tower cooler, okay, cool, literally. But also check the manufacturer of the case as to what its cooler clearance is. Because if you buy one that looks pretty damn cool, pretty damn beefy, and you find out it's 172 millimeters, and your PC only supports 170mm, it's not going to fit the side panel on. And it'll look a mess, and then you'll have to go ahead and change it and all that on. When you could have avoided that by go ahead and finding out and say, okay, this case is a bit small, see if they do a slightly different one, or just continue looking. Okay, so really always make sure everything fits. Make sure it fits, make sure it looks good, and make sure that at the end of the day it's the right size for you and that you're happy to look at it. Because it's your PC at the end of the day, it's your build, it's your pride and joy. So go ahead and building something that you think, oh, I hate the look of this. You can avoid that. That's down to you. You can build something like, oh yeah, this is great, but it's too big. Kind of wish I'd built a smaller one. That's the point where you go, you have a point right now on saying, okay, maybe this will be a bit too big. What can I do about it? Could you perhaps go for a smaller case, a smaller motherboard? At the end of the day, the options are open. You have the ability to have it exactly the way that you want it, okay? Nevertheless, if you're like me, there's always the ability to mod a case, whether it be a simple paint job or doing some other crazy thing. Now look at the Jay's 2 cents Destiny build if you want ideas on crazy that looks great. But, at the end of the day, it's yours. Do what you want with it. Make sure it's right. I know many people go ahead and avoid talking about cases. Oh, it's a black box that you put your PC in. Yeah. But it doesn't have to be a black box that you put your PC in. It can be your pride and joy that you will look at and think, I built that. I love the way that looks. I love how it fits in. Yeah, I love the colour scheme that I planned out carefully. I love the way the RGB does it. Okay? So remember that when you go ahead and pick out your case. Yeah, make sure it's in budget. But at the end of the day, it's what you'll be looking at for the entirety of it. And carrying on with that, case fans. Now, in most cases they'll come with a standard set of fans, whether it be somewhere between 1 and 3 fans, most cases will have, which is perfectly acceptable. Most cases, generally speaking, will have just some standard black fans that aren't too offensive or anything. That push, I guess, an acceptable amount of air. Now, if you do a lot of overclocking, well, that's not going to be good enough for you. You might want to make sure that you've got a nice mesh case, so you can put in a load of powerful fans, such as the Noctua Industrials if you want them, or that one Noctua fan that looks really good. It's really advanced. Hope they do a black version soon. You might want to make sure that you've got far better fans than most people will ever have. Alternatively, say you're doing a real Prebuild, you want it to be all colour matched. Again, you want to make sure that it's colour matched. You want to make sure you've got fans that do match it. Or even you want to have a huge RGB build. It's not too difficult to get hold of RGB fans. But if you're not worried about that, if you really don't care, or if it's really just not a concern, because generally speaking it doesn't make too big a difference in performance, then in that case you don't even need to worry about this bit here, okay? Alright. And we'll be moving on to the last few bits now. Up next, power supply. Okay, so you've got pretty much everything ready. The only thing you need to do now is make sure that you have enough power. And on top of that, you need to make sure that it is safe, it works well, it's efficient, it's the right size, because there's more than just one size of power supplies. You've got your standard ATX, you've got your small form factor, your flex ATX, etc. Make sure it's the right one that fits your case. Yeah, make sure it's not too long so it doesn't go ahead and bump into anything in your case and you find out that you can't fit that power supply. Okay, so already make sure it fits. Use a PC part picker or something else. Find out how much power all your parts are going to use. Now there's 2 ways you can go around this bit. Me personally, what I like to do is go ahead and calculate power that everything is going to need in this system. How much is the processor going to use? How much are the fans going to use? How much is everything in that system actually going to use? Then add an extra 200 to 300 to that number. That will roughly be what you want in your power supply. Plenty of headroom, so if you want to overclock, you've got the headroom and your power budget. And more than that, it means that you will never go ahead and push that power supply to a load which it was not designed for. Carrying on with pushing it to a load make sure that regardless of what you get a power supply with an 80 plus bronze minimum rating. What that means is that when they go ahead and testing these, because it's a very specific system for getting the 80 plus rating, it means if that power supply, say, is pulling 500 watts, yeah, it's pulling 500 watts and dispersing that into the system, it's actually pulling 600 watts from the wall, because it's about 80% efficiency. And the various grades, such as 80 plus bronze, I think that's like 84% plus. Yeah, it's a fairly rigorous test which they have to go through, which also helps it, seem pretty reliable. So at the very least, make sure it's 80 plus bronze. We've got some that are like 80 plus titanium, where it's something like 90 to 95% efficiency, which is insane, and are ridiculously hard to get, and that would be a very good sign that power supply is more than enough for whatever you need it for, and it's not going to break. Also, you're still not quite sure, the LCT forums, that's Linus Tech Tips, the forums that they have, I do believe they've got a power supply tier list on telling you, from basically best to worst, what kind of power supplies you really should be looking at if you're getting one. Okay, so they should have links. Can't remember if it's got links, but either way, it has at the very least got the names and the manufacturer, so you know who to go for. And they do break it down to individual ones. Okay, so check them out if you're worried about your power supply. But either way, make sure it's more power than you will need, not by much, just more power than you will need. It's efficient, and then it's not going to break. And also check the warranty. Having a nice warranty is always a good thing. Okay, and well, I guess it's time for us to go ahead and move on to peripherals. Okay, peripherals. So this is, of course, the input that you put into your system as well as the output, your monitors. So what do you want? Well, let's start off with your keyboard and mouse. What do? You do gaming, you do professional esports, you're just doing general work. When you're gaming, or you want esports or something like that, generally speaking, most keyboards will be fine. If you are super professional about it, or you want to make sure that you've got the best possible experience and you want to make sure you've got a decent mechanical keyboard, and I will try to put a list of them together at one point, but kind of hard to get a hold of keyboards. Either way though, make sure you have a decent keyboard that you're happy with. And if you're doing production workloads, one, get a good keyboard. You'll be typing a lot. You'll be doing a lot of shortcuts. Make sure you've got a good keyboard that you're comfortable with, that's happy to type on. Anything like that, make sure. And if you are, say, doing a lot of video editing, you might need macro keys or shortcut keys and that lot. In which case you might want to go ahead and maybe even just get a second cheap keyboard that can just act as a huge macro key layout. I do believe Taran von Hart from Linus Tech Tips even did a couple of videos on it. I do suggest checking them out if that's the kind of thing that you need. But yeah, only a quick short overview over them, nothing too fancy. Mice, again, it's the same sort of deal. You don't really need to get a super expensive one to do most things, but the more that you pay, the more features that you get. So you prefer a heavier mouse, that means you can buy a mouse where you can adjust the weight. So you need more buttons because you need shortcut buttons. You have the ability to set them. And stuff like that is useful to have. It's like my current mouse that I use is was part of a keyboard and mouse combo. It's a Magic Prebuild Habit, I think it is, something like that. Anyway, I love this mouse. Like, it's super cheap. I know it's cheap. It's not the best in the world. But at the end of the day, I'm happy with it. Why? So it's got a good weight to it. It's got a nice braided cable. And the two buttons I never thought that would actually be that useful. Right on the side, it's got a back and forwards button. I feel like going through web pages, and when you're scrolling through several things, the animation, it makes time a lot faster. And it does work on various other things. And you can set them to work in game. I don't generally, but it's a nice thing to have to increase your own production workload. And gaming, of course, you want those buttons because, hey, what do you know? Someone comes around the corner, you can just press a button to throw a grenade rather than have to find the button on your keyboard, because it'll just be there at your fingertips. Anyway, and of course, the last but not the least, the monitor. Now, if you want to go ahead and save a buck, use your TV. Simple as, no worries there. If not, get yourself a decent monitor. and make sure you get one that's good for you. Say you do a lot of creative workloads and you might want to get a 4K color corrected monitor, so that will be very accurate and has a good color space. Alright. Or say you do a lot of esports gaming, you might want to get a high refresh rate monitor such as 120 or 144 hertz, or if you really feel like go ahead and shelling out, get a 240 hertz. Me personally, my current setup, it's not ideal with the monitors, but I'm quite happy with it. I've got 3 monitors. They're 3 TVs, but they basically work as monitors. They're all running at 60 Hz. And my main one is 4K. It's this huge 4K TV that I like to use simply because it gives me a lot of real estate and helps me with doing fine detailing. It's a nice thing to have, especially when you're working on a huge timeline, you can easily see that timeline. Yes, get yourself a monitor that will work for you, if nothing else. Because at the end of the day, you're going to be staring at that thing all day, every day. Whether you're playing games, whether you're doing work, you need to make sure that it's one, going to do the job that you need it to. 2, if you're doing color, doing any sort of photo editing or stuff like that, you need to make sure it's color correct, that no pixels are going to go ahead and be off. If it's a high refresh rate, you need to make sure it is a high refresh rate. Read the reviews. Does it smear? Does it have overexposure? Stuff like that. Check it. At the end of the day, anything extra, like, do you need a base mount? Are you mounting it to the wall? Are you mounting it to the desk? Find out if it has one. All this. If you take nothing away from this interview, take nothing away from this guy. One thing that I do beg that you take away from all of this is, regardless of what you're buying, regardless of what you're doing, make sure that you do your research before you press buy, before you order it, before you pick it up in the store. Make sure you do your research, make sure you check it's compatible. At the end of the day, make sure that you are happy with what you're buying, what you're building, what you're using. Anyway, this has been a bit of a different one, but this has been the 117th con. If you like the video, like it. If you dislike it, leave a dislike. Any thoughts, questions, comments, leave them down below. I will get to them as soon as I can. Don't forget to check out my Facebook and Twitch page for any sort of upcoming live streams or news and events. And, well, subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell if you really do want to stay informed. Anyway, this has been the 117th con. I thank you all so much for watching. Have a brilliant day, folks, and, well, until next time, when it'll be Christmas. Hey, and a couple of specials. Anyway, have a good day, folks. 117th con, signing off.